One BMP cost the Russian army at least $1 million per unit. A T-series tank, no less than $3 million. Russian army lost $30 million in a single assault in January 2025. In just a few hours, the Russians lost 15 armored vehicles, a pontoon bridge, 5 tanks were totally destroyed, and 2 more were damaged. But this wasn't the only assault that day. So how much does Russia actually lose and spend per day in Ukraine? Let's break it down. The first challenge in calculating Russia's war expenses is the sheer number of daily assaults. Anywhere from 50 to 100, but not all of them make it to video footage, and not all involve armored vehicles. Desperate to conserve their dwindling stock of tanks and IFVs, Russian forces are now resorting to electric scooters, motorcycles, and ATVs for their attacks in eastern Ukraine. Take this assault, for example. It lasted just a few minutes. The price of a single Chinese-made motorcycle? Around $500. There are 8 of them here. That's at least $4,000 down the drain for Russia in just one short engagement. To get a clearer picture of how much Russia is actually spending on this war, let's look at the documented losses of equipment, vehicles, and ammunition over a set period, then break that down into daily costs. We'll start with tanks and armored vehicles. But first, if you are interested in this video, a like is a great way to say so. Your support is important. According to estimates from the International Institute for Strategic Studies, in 2024 alone, Russia lost about 1,400 main battle tanks and over 3,700 infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, total Russian losses in these categories amount to around 14,000 MBTs, IFVs, and APCs combined. These figures align closely with data from British intelligence and the independent research project Oryx, which tracks losses through open-source intelligence. Thus, Russia has lost at least 4,353 tanks, with a total value exceeding $13 billion. That means every single day, Russia is burning through at least $12 million just from tank losses. But that's just the tanks. The BMPs and APCs lost in this war have cost Russia another $10 billion, adding an extra $9 million to the daily tally. That brings us to at least $21 million per day, just from destroyed tanks and armored vehicles. And keep in mind, we're not even counting personnel losses here. Human life has no price tag. But besides these endless assaults, Russia continues to wage an all-out artillery war. According to Ukrainian Army Commander Alexander Syrsky, Russia fires around 40,000 artillery shells per day. According to Business Insider, the production cost of a 152mm artillery shell in Russia is around $1,000. Sounds like a drop in the bucket? Try multiplying it by 40,000. That's a minimum of $40 million Russia is spending every single day just bombarding Ukrainian positions. This pushes the total daily cost up to $61 million. But wait, there's more. On top of all that artillery, Russia has been raining down massive glide bombs, weighing 1,100, 2,200, 3,300, and even 6,500 pounds. Ever since they became widespread in 2023, they've changed the battlefield. According to open sources, a standard dumb bomb modified into a glide bomb, equipped with wings and GPS guidance, costs roughly $40,000 per unit. Based on the current rate of Russian strikes, the Russian Air Force drops at least 3,000 glide bombs per month, or 100 per day. So now, the total daily cost jumps to $65 million. But the front line isn't the only place where the cost of war is spiraling out of control. According to reports from the Ukrainian Air Force, between a span of 822 days, Russia launched over 14,700 drones and 4,300 missiles at Ukraine. That's an average of 18 drones and 5 missiles per day. Let's start with the drones. Most of these one-way attack UAVs are Shahed drones, originally built in Iran and later modified by Russia. They have a range of 1,200 miles and carry 90 pounds of explosives. The estimated production cost per unit varies between $35,000 and $50,000. Let's take the middle ground, $42,500 per drone. That means Russia is burning $765,000 per day just on drone attacks. Subscribe so we can keep providing you with data-driven insights. Now, missiles are a whole different story. Russia's missile arsenal is massive, ranging from subsonic cruise missiles to hypersonic ones. Their prices fluctuate wildly, from $500,000 for a Kh-59 missile to a staggering $15 million for a Kh-47 Kinzhal. Here's a full price breakdown. And in November 2024, Moscow introduced a brand new missile called the Oreshnik. Its cost? A mind-blowing $50 million per missile. As of 11 a.m. on November 20th, 2024, or 784 days since the invasion, Russia had spent over $18 billion just on missile strikes against Ukraine. That means a daily missile bill of $23 million. Look at that counter. It's practically catching fire. Total so far, $88,765,000 per day. And we haven't even reached the most expensive losses yet, jets and warships. By February 2025, Russia had lost hundreds of aircraft and helicopters from its aerospace forces. Among them were two extremely rare AWACS of 50 planes, each valued between $330 million and $500 million. The total value of aircraft and helicopters lost over 1,096 days of war, a jaw-dropping $10.5 billion. That means Russia is losing over $9.5 million per day just in aircraft. The counter surges ahead, $98,265,000 per day. And now, let's talk warships. Ukraine may not have a large navy, but it has waged an incredibly effective sea war against Russia. To counter Russian warships, Ukraine has developed and deployed its own naval kamikaze drones, and they've been making waves. Since the Kremlin launched its full-scale war, Ukraine has destroyed or severely damaged 29 vessels of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The list of sunk and crippled warships includes everything from small tugboats and corvettes to the fleet's flagship, the cruiser Moskva, which alone was worth $750 million. Among the wreckage is also the submarine Rostov-on-Don, which, according to British intelligence, suffered catastrophic repeated damage and most likely sank on the spot. The price tag? A solid $300 million. Adding it all up, the total value of Russian warships destroyed over 3 years of war reaches nearly $1.5 billion, translating to about $1.4 million in daily losses. And oh look, our counter is creeping toward that nice round number, $99,665,000 per day. But wait, we're not done yet. To this sum, we still need to factor in the cost of destroyed air defense systems, artillery, MLRS, and transport vehicles, which are being wiped out by the tens of thousands. And that's not all. We also have to account for operational costs, fuel, logistics, munition storage, military salaries, and compensation for the families of fallen and wounded soldiers. For 2025, the official Russian military budget is set at $135.5 billion, which comes out to $390.2 million per day. But even this insane number is far from the real total. Turns out Moscow has a hidden budget, a shadow war chest that is roughly the same size as its official one. Through off-the-books financing, the Kremlin pumps an additional $130 billion a year into the war machine. That means Russia is actually spending nearly twice as much on the war as commonly believed, a whopping $746.4 million per day. And if you ask Ukraine's top military intelligence chief, he'll tell you that the real cost is even higher, approaching $1 billion per day. Insane, isn't it? But even with these staggering numbers, this isn't the most expensive war in history. We covered the costliest wars of all time in a previous video. You'll find it on our channel. But here's the real question. How is Russia, under heavy sanctions, managing to sustain these insane losses and ongoing expenses? Well, the answer is simple. A huge portion of Russia's lost equipment actually cost Putin nothing. The losses are real, but the expenses? Not so much. Before the war, Russia had thousands of Soviet-era tanks sitting in storage, inherited from the USSR. Estimates of their exact number vary wildly, sometimes by thousands, depending on the source. And these are not well-preserved museum pieces. Most of them were left to rot on open-air lots for decades. Many are in such a pitiful state that they can't even drive or shoot properly. So instead of deploying them as is, Russia cannibalizes these old tanks for spare parts, piecing together one working tank from several rusting relics. That's why out of all the new tanks Russia has produced since the start of the war, only about 30% are actually new. The rest? Just refurbished, Soviet scrap, freshly painted and sent back to die. The same problem applies to Russian aircraft. According to the Military Balance 2024, Russia's total military aircraft fleet is around 1,400 units. But 550 of them are Soviet-era models that Russia no longer manufactures. In reality, only 30 to 40% of these aircraft are actually combat ready. Since the full-scale invasion began, Russia has lost at least 40% of its pre-war fleet of Ka-52 attack helicopters and 20% of its Mi-8 MTPR-1 electronic warfare helicopters. Their Mi-28 and Mi-35 helicopters have also suffered heavy losses. So instead of focusing on how much an individual Russian tank or aircraft costs, the real question is whether they can actually produce more of them, or whether they just keep recycling old junk. But those numbers are hidden behind the fog of war. Still, this doesn't mean Putin's war machine is collapsing. Far from it. Instead of building shopping malls, Russia is opening new drone assembly lines. Its state weapons giant, Rostec, is booming, increasing revenue and pouring massive investments into weapons production. By 2023, Rostec employed 660,000 workers. In 2024, they plan to add another 70,000. It's clear that Russia's economy is shifting onto a full-blown war footing, trying to rebuild its pre-war stockpiles. Profits from oil and gas exports are funneling straight into the military. And yet, Putin keeps repeating that he wants peace. So why does the Kremlin keep stockpiling weapons? What do you think Putin's real plan is? To take all of Ukraine, then march on Europe? To seize the Baltics and dominate the Baltic Sea? Or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments.